I would have encouraged her to try to start writing earlier. I feel like I've got a lot of stories in me and I want to get them out. So I wish I had started a little bit earlier.
Jenn Bouchard's latest novel, Considering Us, just hit shelves on February 6th, following the success of her award-winning debut, First Course. Her books transport readers to coastal New England with rich storytelling and a delicious focus on food. When she's not writing, she's shaping young minds as a high school social studies teacher, a role she's held for 25 years. Jenn lives in the Boston suburbs with her family. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Jenn.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you here, Jenn. I'm curious, where does your story as an author begin?
I went to Bates College in Maine for my undergraduate education, and I stayed really involved as an alum up to the point where I was serving as the Alumni Association president for 2 years. And when that was over, that was a role I really enjoyed. Really enjoyed getting to know people from different age groups, people who'd gone there before me, after me, et cetera. And when it was over, I was sort of left with this big gap in my life. I certainly was busy. My kids were really young. Like you said, I'm a high school teacher as well, but I was looking for that thing for me, kind of a creative outlet. And I'm a people person. I wanted something where I could, ultimately meet a lot of other people through this. So I ended up doing the most isolating thing possible, which is writing a novel. Now I get to enjoy the people part of it. But for 2.5 years when I was drafting it, there weren't a lot of other people involved beside myself. But yeah, that was really it. I decided just sort of on a whim at the beach at the end of the summer that I was going to give this a try, and I had no idea what I was doing.
Did you have any inkling that there was a writer living inside of you, when you were growing up or in high school or anything like that?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, I always enjoyed writing. I thought I was pretty good at it until I went to college and was humbled very quickly by some professors. But I really didn't, take a stab at creative writing in any sort of serious way beyond things that had been asked of me, as an elementary school student, to write a story or something like that. But I always enjoyed reading, and writers tend to be readers, and I think one of the things that I did early on in this whole writing experiment that I think was really helpful, and I would definitely suggest other people do it, was I attended a lot of author events. Book signings, talks, things like that, read a lot of interviews with authors, things, watch things like this. And that was really helpful because one of the things that I learned was that this is tough. It's a tough road, even for some of the most successful writers in many cases. But it was also very encouraging in a lot of ways. And I started to see a path for myself.
Yeah, I think it's also good to go to those types of events and realize that there is a community of writers out there. And, we do tend to sort of kind of get together, we talk about the craft, but it does help because, as you mentioned, it can be an isolating activity. And when you're writing, certainly not when you're editing and when you're out publicizing, those are definitely not solitary activities,
No.
but it can be, when you're going through the process and just kind of rubbing shoulders and getting to know the people who also do this thing that you want to do, I think is helpful, not just for inspiration, but just also for networking purposes too.
Absolutely. I mean, now I've got such a great community around me. And with this being my second book that just came out, what a difference to, number one, kind of know what I'm doing a little bit more. And number two, having all these other writers to talk to about what I'm trying out and, getting their input, and just overall support is fantastic.
Yeah. Well, going back to that first book, what was the journey like writing it? So you're on the beach, you said, hey, this is something, you kind of conceived of it as a possibility. What was the process like putting pen to paper and getting the story out into the world?
Well, I told my husband what I was going to do because I was like, I'm gonna need to figure this out and have some time to actually do it. And like I said, my kids were pretty young at the time, and he was very supportive. He's like, if that's what you want to try to do, go for it. Why not? But that was really it in terms of people I told. I started to very gradually start to tell a few family members and close friends that I was, trying to see if this was something I liked. But it wasn't until I was done with the first draft 2.5 years later that I actually started to talk about it a little bit more. I think part of it was I came up with a loose plot, characters, started to really think about who those characters were, plotted out more or less what my story was going to be. But it changed a lot. And I have to say, that first chapter, because I truly didn't know what I was doing, I probably rewrote that first chapter 25 times.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, right? I mean, that's the first 5 pages they say are
Oh,
the most
yeah.
critical. So once you had it down, what was your process to getting it published?
So I went to a seminar at Grub Street in Boston, which is a pretty well-known writing center, and it was a 3-hour class on how to query a novel. And I really liked the instructor, and so I ended up hiring her as a consultant to take a look at my first few chapters and to help me write a query letter. And she was great. That was a good first step for a novice like myself. And she said, do you have a friend or somebody? Because I didn't know any other writers. And she said, do you have a friend who you would trust to take a look at this and to give you some input? And I thought about it. I said, yeah, no, I do. I have a friend who is not a writer, but she is an English. She's a middle school English teacher, and we've been friends since we were in high school. And I said, would you mind looking at this from the perspective of a reader? And that was very helpful. So, taking both people's input, I was able to start to edit this thing. And then I started trying to query agents, which I did for a year. And I had a lot of really close calls. It was a tough experience. And I ultimately decided that I was going to pursue some small presses that didn't require an agent. And so I did that. And I did find a press who wanted to publish it. That press has since closed, as some of them do. And it's a very long story, and that's sort of the Reader's Digest version of it. But I did end up getting my rights back to the book ultimately and have republished it as a second edition. So it's all mine now, which, was also challenging. Luckily, I have some good friends now who are excellent self-publishers, and they really helped me a lot with that process. And it's still selling. Like, I still sell copies of it almost every day. I think having the second book out now is certainly helping with that as well. But yeah, it's still with me.
Yeah, I mean, it does put wind in the sails when
Yeah.
book two comes out. I think the thing with self publishing is you can, if you think about it as running your own small business,
Yeah.
and that is the product you're selling. I think it does help, and I think if you do it right, you can actually do better financially
Yes.
than most traditionally published authors. And by most, I don't mean, the James Pattersons and the Stephen
Right.
Kings of the world. I
Right.
mean, most authors are selling, much fewer than 5,000 copies of
Yeah.
a book. And in the traditional route, everyone's getting a cut. In the self-publishing route, if you set it up right, it's all going to you.
Absolutely. So that's been an interesting experience. I did find a new publisher for my second book, and that's gone really well. Black Rose Writing. I'm really happy with them, and yeah, I mean it's been a lot of learning along the way, and I still feel like I'm learning new things every day on this journey. But people have asked me, they're like, this is so much work, all of it, the writing, the publishing, the marketing. Why are you doing it? And I'm like, I'm hooked. I really, I
Yeah.
really do enjoy it, and I think so much of it is I've enjoyed meeting all of these other authors and all of these readers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what can you share with us about your latest, Considering Us?
Absolutely. So, considering us, I wrote it in the second half of 2022. And as a high school teacher who taught during the pandemic, that was a really interesting experience, as you might imagine. It was exhausting. Our protocols and policies and procedures just kept changing every 5 minutes. I went from having 5 classes of students to 10 classes of students during that school year. And ultimately, when things had kind of calmed down, I was like, I want to write something that is not sad, It's not stressful. I want to write a really light, funny book that I love writing and that readers are just going to enjoy. So that's Considering Us. And I decided that I wanted to write it as a romantic comedy. I wanted it to be a forced proximity kind of book. And so by doing that, I thought of the setting of a boarding school. So put some characters together into a residential work situation where they really can't avoid each other that much. And I didn't go to boarding school, but I'm surrounded by them here in New England. I interviewed a ton of friends who went to boarding school when they were students or who taught at boarding schools and got all of their stories and insights. And that really helped me a lot. And it only took me 6 months this time to write it. So it was a lot quicker than 2.5 years.
So, what changes between book one and book two to cut 2.5 years down to 6 months?
So it was actually there's another book I wrote in between, and that has not been published yet. It was supposed to be published in October of 2023, but it was with my first publisher and they closed. So I have the rights back to that book as well, and that's my next step now is to figure out what happens to that book. But Considering Us was the third book I wrote, but both of those two books took me 6 months, and I do think that you get a lot more confidence once you've done it one time. You know what works for you and what doesn't work for you. I realize I can't spend, weeks with one chapter. I have to just keep writing and I can always come back to it later. So not get bogged down in all the little details. They'll work themselves out down the road. But I do think just the confidence in knowing that I could do this and do it pretty well, that helped me to write these other books.
Yeah, the confidence it certainly helps, and just writing is like muscle memory too. I mean, it's the more you do it, the better you get at it, the stronger you get at it, the faster you can do it.
Definitely.
So I do think it is a sharp learning curve on that first one, and then the others can come quicker. I'm curious that the theme of your first book, first course. I'm looking at it over your shoulder. It looks like there's an apron on the cover, and of course, your protagonist in this one is works in the food services industry. Is that an industry you've got some experience in, Jen, or is just something you're passionate about?
So my first job was actually as a hostess at a Chili's restaurant.
The baby back ribs.
Yeah, exactly. And this was back in the day when there was a smoking section in restaurants, and the hostess stand is always right behind the smoking section. So I'd come home smelling like an ashtray, and usually with a really good chocolate milkshake with me. But so yeah, I've spent a lot of time in restaurants, but not from the cooking end of things. But I am a home cook. I am someone who got really into cooking in my 20s, especially around the time that Ina Garten's cookbooks came out, Barefoot Contessa, all that. And the great thing about Ina is she takes really good food and breaks it down in a way that, if you can, my grandmother used to always say, if you can read, you can cook. And if you can read, you can make her recipes, and they are phenomenal. So I got really into that. And when I decided I was going to write first course, I said, I really want to incorporate cooking into this book and see, have that be an angle of this main character. And then when people really liked that, I was like, I think this is what I need to do. I think that my future books really need to have some element of this. And so that has been a part of the other books that I have written and that I'm writing right now.
Very cool. Yeah, the cooking is kind of sexy, though. I mean, I find it sexy.
Absolutely.
And speaking of sexy, this is somewhat of a sexy story, isn't it?
A little bit. I mean, it's not, it's the kind of thing people have asked me. They're like, well, can my teenager read it? I'm like, actually, yeah, because there's nothing. I mean, there's things that have happened, obviously, but there's no real explicit nature of this book. It's a bit PG-13. So anyway, yeah, no, it's the main character is gets involved with her. She's a private chef in Boston. She gets involved with her client's husband. She doesn't even really know why she is. She's just sort of bored, and he likes to go eat ice cream with her, and she likes the attention. But it's not like she's way into him or anything. But anyway, they get caught, and I'm not giving away much because it's on the back cover of the book. But they get caught by his teenage daughter, and that's pretty horrible. The client, the wife of this guy, trashes her all over Boston. Soon she has no clients left except for one. She cooks for a reclusive player on the Boston Celtics, David Anders. And he doesn't really care what she's up to, and his mom, who's really the one who hires her, she doesn't really care either, because David loves the food, and he's kind of keeps to himself. He's a homebody, and Devin, the main character, is a really important positive force in his life. So they keep going. So it's a bit of a spin on a Jerry Maguire kind of story, just what you're down to one client. And that's obviously not enough for her. She's living in Boston. It's extremely expensive. Her best friend has a connection with the new head of school at a boarding school in New Hampshire, and they need a director of dining. So Devin kind of begrudgingly goes up to New Hampshire. It's beautiful. She's like, well, I could do this for a year, and make some money and kind of see what's next. And everything looks great. And as she's about to leave, she sees the one who got away from 15 years ago. And he's a history teacher and soccer coach on the campus. She needs the job, and he's there. So that's your forced proximity.
There you go. Did you see the movie The Holdovers by any chance?
I haven't seen it yet. It's on my list. I think, I've got break this week, so I think I'm going to watch it, but I've heard I need to see it.
It's really good. I mean, it does take place around the December holidays, but it's everything I know about boarding school I learned from that movie. I think it's boarding school in the 70s also.
Right, but Paul Giamatti's great in everything he does, so I really want to watch it.
He does these local commercials for maybe they're not local, they could be national, but I think it's for an insurance, no, for a hospital. He does commercials for like a hospital in New York.
No, I've never seen this.
It's amazing. Their commercials are amazing. You think you're watching a film. Like the first time I ever saw him was in that Howard Stern movie, Private Parts.
Yeah,
where he
yeah.
played the jerky
pig virus.
Pig virus. Yeah.
And then he was so good in Sideways, which is one of my favorite movies. So
I have an admission. I've never seen Sideways, and my brother yells at me every time I tell him that. He's like, "How do you have you not seen that movie?" I'm like, I just haven't seen it. I don't know.
No, you need to. That's definitely something to put on your list for in the next month. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I will do that once I get back to the cold weather, and I need more escapism. And it's too nice out here. But not I'm going out. I mean, I'm here with my dad.
You can open the door.
I'm looking outside right now. It's a beautiful day out there, but there's palm trees. They're moving. It's all right. But not watching a lot of TV down here.
No.
Jen, one of the ways I like to get to know my guests a little bit more is by throwing some random pop culture questions at them. Well, they're random for you, not so random for me, because I have them in my head. But I'm curious, when you're growing up, Jen, what were some of your favorite things to watch on TV?
I watched a lot of TV. So I was a big fan of, Who's the Boss and Growing Pains and The Wonder Years, like all those kind of shows. I watched them all.
I loved Who's the Boss.
That was the best.
He was great. So Tony Danza and Judith Light. And what's her name?
Alyssa Milano.
Alyssa Milano. I mean, I had the biggest crush on Alyssa Milano
I'm sure.
back in those days.
I'm sure.
I might still have a crush on her. I'm not sure. She's always getting into it with James Woods on Twitter.
Oh yeah, she does. She throws down, so she's definitely entertaining to watch.
Yeah, no, those are like classic ABC shows, right? Mr. Belvedere was on around that same time.
I watched that, definitely.
Oh yeah, and was that Full House, or was Full House maybe a little bit after?
Full House, yeah, I definitely watched it, but it was more when I was like babysitting on a Friday night or something like that.
Yeah. What about music? What'd you like listening to?
It really depended on the time period. My first tape that I owned was cassette tape was Madonna, True Blue, and then my first CD was Vanilla Ice to the Extreme.
Oh yeah. Good old Rob Van Winkle.
And then I was in high school in Washington State. I moved a lot. My dad was in the Navy, and I was out there for the height of grunge, and so I got super into it. It was Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Soundgarden, all that was going on right there in Seattle where we were. So that was a really fun time to be there.
Yeah, my first tape was The Cars' Heartbeat City. It was given to me for I think my 9th birthday. And then the first tape I bought myself was Houdini Escape, because I was really into rap music back in the day. Nice. And that was great. And then CD, gosh, I was late to the CD game. my first CD was given to me by my friend Karen Rial for my 16th birthday. It was John Bon Jovi's Blaze of Glory soundtrack,
Fantastic.
which was a really, really good soundtrack. But I
Yeah.
didn't have anything to play it on for like a year after that. And I mean, grunge. I remember I was a big metalhead back in high school. And so grunge really, I remember listening to Pearl Jam 10, driving
Yeah.
myself up to the University of Connecticut with my friend Nick when I was moving in freshman year. That's when that came out. So that's
Such a good CD. Oh my gosh.
fall of 92. No, fall of 92. Yeah, fall of 92. And so
So
it was
good.
that. It was Nirvana, Nevermind. You know, I think
It
Soundgarden,
all
Super
still holds
Unknown,
up. It's all
Stone
really,
Temple
really good.
Pilots.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh.
I saw
that
them.
was-
I saw Stone Temple Pilots in concert. Remember, I came home from like on break from college, and I think I saw them for $20. I mean, could you imagine? Because
Yeah.
now everything is so much more expensive.
No,
Amazing.
my friend Bruce, who was a former copywriter, wrote all those Bart Simpson's Butterfinger ads back in the 80s.
Oh
He has
wow.
he has a framed thing of his old concert tickets, and it's like The Who, $5. You know, Rolling Stones, $8.50.
It's amazing.
It's insane. It's like my kids will not know that. You know,
No,
they wanted to see
no.
Taylor Swift this summer, and it was going to be like $1,500. I'm like,
Right.
it's insane. I mean, she's worth it, but it's insane.
Yeah. But they're not making any money off of their albums anymore. So this is how it's working. It's all shifted, but it's mind-boggling.
Yeah. What would you say is one of the best pieces of advice on writing that you've ever received?
So I've gone, like I said, I've gone to hear a lot of authors speak, and I was at the AWP conference in Seattle a couple of years ago, and I heard Angie Kim speak, and she said, "Don't let the best thing in your life become the worst thing." And I keep that in my phone and my reminders, and whenever I'm having because publishing, as you know, up and down, up and down. Even on your best days, you're going to get an email, rejecting you from something or telling you something's not going to happen. And so I always try to keep that in mind. Like, let's focus on the things that have gone really, really well and try to let the not so great things roll off, or at least try to find a path forward from them. But that's hard. It's taken me a few years to get to that point. I also went to hear Ellen Hildebrand speak a couple years ago, and she, talks about the criticism that she's gotten, ever since she was at Iowa. And there were a lot of classmates of hers who just didn't respect the kind of writing she did or anything like that. And, in criticism she's gotten since. And she said, I am consistent. And consistent is why I'm here right now. And I'm like, you know what? That's true. Like, people who are fans of hers read her work because of what she writes, the kinds of books she writes. And, my book is not always going to be someone's cup of tea, and that's okay, because I've got a lot of other people who really like it.
Yeah, you can't go out there pleasing everybody or
Yeah,
trying to please everybody, because then you're just going to water. You're going to water whatever you're doing
Right.
down, I think.
Totally.
You got to ruffle some feathers. You got to get a couple of bad reviews. It's a rite of passage.
Yeah.
Although I hate those reviews that people give you, and they clearly haven't read the book. They're just like trolling you for some reason. Those happen every now and then.
Yes, I had
Why?
someone who plastered a bad review like on every site she could find. I was like, wow, that took a lot of effort.
Yeah, like who's got that kind of time?
No.
Like, who's got that kind of time to, you gotta. It's almost like you gotta pray for them. You gotta hope.
Right,
Hopefully, they get the help they need someday.
Go get a hobby, right?
Yeah, exactly. If somebody came up to you, let's say somebody at your book signing earlier today, Jen came up to you and said, "Jen, what's some advice on writing you would give me? What kind of advice would you give an aspiring writer?"
So I just actually taught a short story class for adults for the month of January. It was like 4 Tuesday evenings to 5 adults who had never really written anything in any kind of serious way. And so I had this experience of kind of walking them through getting started with short stories. And I think that there is a story in everyone if they're interested in writing it, and it is something that you can do if you want to. And so I would say give it a try. And you don't have to do it all alone. You can do it through a course or something like that. There's so many resources available. But see if you like it. Just try it.
Just try it. You gotta start somewhere too, right? I mean, it's like just putting pen to paper or fingers to keyboard and
Right.
kind of see where it goes. I find it to be very therapeutic, even if I'm not like writing, a story. If I'm just like doing some journaling or just doing a
Definitely.
thought piece, it just like, I don't know. There's something about it that just makes me feel better.
Yeah, and that was what some of them said. There were a couple of the students in the class who are just living extraordinarily hectic lives. They have young children, and this was a gift they were giving themselves, this little break, this little thing for them. And they said the same thing. They said, I don't know if I'll ever do anything with this, but the act of writing these ideas was very therapeutic.
Yeah. Yeah, just it does something. It's like you're tapping into some area of your soul that where creativity lives. I don't think it lives in the brain necessarily, but
Right.
that's probably a conversation for another time. But to me, it's almost like meditation, because you're just taking something and you're creating something. I mean, it's a thought, and the thought becomes a thing once you put it on paper. And I don't know, there's something so cool about it.
I agree.
And Jenn, if you could go back in time and let's say we get into our DeLorean, we hit 88 miles an hour and we go back in time, because who doesn't love a good Back to the Future reference?
Absolutely.
And you met your younger self.
Yeah.
What are some words of advice you might give your younger self?
I thought about this earlier today, actually, because there's been something going around Instagram where it's like I had coffee with my younger self, and this is what I told them, or something like that. And I would have encouraged her to try to start writing earlier. I don't have any regrets, but at the same time, publishing my first book in my 40s is fine, and I think I'm very inspired by people who've done that even later. But I feel like I've got a lot of stories in me, and I want to get them out. So I wish I had started a little bit earlier. I wish someone would have encouraged me and said, I think I could see you writing a book. That would have been really helpful. So I would like to tell myself that.
There you go. You'd have to wear a disguise though, so you wouldn't freak your younger self out though. It's like
absolutely
maybe like a little Groucho Marx, glasses or something.
Totally.
Very cool. Well, Jenn, I know the book is out. Where can people pick up Considering Us?
It's you can get it everywhere that books are sold, all the major online retailers, any bookstore, if they don't have it in stock, can order it. It is available at a number of independent bookstores. So on my website, jennbouchard.com, I actually do list on the front page a number of bookstores, primarily in the Northeast, that are carrying them. I'm also doing a lot of in-person events over the next 6 weeks or so, and hopefully some more into the summer. So I'll keep all those updated as well. And if you're in the area where I'm doing an event, I'd love to see you.
Very cool. I will put links to your website and where to buy the book in our show notes. Jenn, do you have Facebook, Instagram, any of those social media thingies you want to share?
I have all of them. I feel like there's just new stuff popping up every day that I'm adding. So, and it's all at the same handle. So whether it's Facebook, Instagram, X, Blue Sky, I am at Jenn Bouchard, BOS for Boston.
There you go. Go Boston. Are you a Celtics fan?
Yes, it has been so much fun. It's been great.
Yeah, my sister and her family are all Celtics fans. My sister and her husband went to college in Boston, so
nice. And I am a Red Sox fan, win or lose. But we are really excited about Alex Bregman. So this could be a fun spring.
All right, very good, Jenn. I will say thank you for stopping by Uncorking a Story and letting me uncork yours.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for listening to Uncorking a Story. If you'd like more information about today's guest or to find out more about Mike, go to uncorkingastory.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in every week to hear Mike Carlin uncork a new story.